9 rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? You got to be in the driver's seat to know how it feels.
We're just moments away from game 1.
All right, well, looks like we are going into game 1 here. Again, round 8 of a 2,000-plus person YCS. This has just been an incredible day.
So it looks like we're going to have Tenpai, Beasteel, Fiendsmith against Ryzeal, Fiendsmith. I think the Mitsurugi deck is actually going to be our backup feature mat, so potentially we'll be able to take a look into that. Here we're going to see Tenpai, so it's really fascinating. After the most recent Forbidden and Limited list, I think a lot of players assumed the hits to Tenpai were finally going to be enough for that deck to kind of be cast aside. But we saw a little bit earlier, actually, before the release of Supreme Darkness, Tenpai be able to adapt by incorporating the Fiendsmith package and become a deck that has a smaller Tenpai strategy, but still benefit from the fact that just one Tenpai is enough to outright win the game.
No, you're absolutely right. And here's our first Tenpai Dragon Hydra there. And I remember YCS Anaheim, everyone cheered when there were certain limits to cards they did not want to face. But the truth of the matter is, Tenpai Dragons are finding a way. After that Effect Veiler crashed down on Hydra, stopping any cards being added from the deck to the hand, well, here's Fiendsmith Engraver to go ahead and add that Fiendsmith Track and Stab.
Yeah, we see here the benefit of the Fiendsmith package. The Fiendsmith package is going to allow this deck to kind of alternate a little bit into a little bit more of a mid-range strategy, and especially when you incorporate 15, 20 different hand interactions. Utilizing the smaller Tenpai strategy with this kind of tried and tested mid-range strategy of Fiendsmith has actually been able to see a lot of success in the last, let's say, about a month or so.
Well, a lot of little light monsters here after Effect Veiler made its presence known, but looks like Ash Blossom going to go ahead and stop the Fiendsmith's Requiem.
I'll change Jerusalem onto Engraver.
All right. So kicking back into high gear here.
So now we have the third interaction here from Taylor. It is a copy of Druis Worm.
Druis Worm certainly difficult to get through, not only getting rid of the Fiendsmith Engraver from the graveyard, but threatening any other monster if Druis Worm happens to be sent to the grave. But speaking of Bystials, looks like we are eating well, because here comes Bystial Magnum.
Magnum effect targeting your effect.
Yeah, it's almost unfortunate they didn't maybe Lubellion earlier, just to give him the utility of potentially counteracting. Really, never mind. You wouldn't be able to counteract the Druis Worm, but
True. That's
maybe
the thing.
potentially, yeah.
So many different directions you can go with this deck. What I love about really all of the decks in this tournament is there's a lot of non-linear play, and it's been really popular to combine these different engines and say, okay, I'm going to go this way for a while. Oh, you stopped it. No, I'm just going to go this way. I'm going to play this Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah, counteracting with the branded Regained, the banish of the Druis Worm, because now he'll have to banish himself if he wants the Regain draw. Looks like he can actually do it here, though, by going into SP Little Knight. Yeah, this is a great... there's kind of multiple ways that the Regain could have activated. One was having it on the field, so when the Druis Worm was banishing the Engraver, he would have been able to put back his own Engraver. Yeah, but this works too.
No longer has to worry about the Druis Worm, that's for sure.
Attempt to end main phase 1.
Yeah.
End phase, I'll resolve the effect Magma.
Right, so now we're going to search with Magma, taking a quick look at the hand. I did catch, I think, maybe not one, but 2 Effect Veilers. So Trevor is all locked and loaded to go, and Taylor may have a hard time getting in.
All right, I'll go draw for turn.
Yep. I will put my deck.
So searching out the Baldrake there, but now it is time for Taylor to draw.
Stand by main.
Yeah.
So we're getting
Pass.
in there.
Oh my God.
Pass.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Just draw.
Turn after turn here of just passing. It's obviously not ideal here for Taylor.
Well, let's see what we end up doing. Taylor may be able to squeak by with this one, but Trevor does appear to have
Baldrake
enough cards in his hand, so...
Targeting Requiem.
The problem here is now the Requiem is going to get shuffled back.
Regain target.
So he's just slowly but surely adding multiple cards to his hand every single turn with that branded Regain. It's already drawn him 2 cards.
Definitely being able to recycle a lot of stuff too. And Baldrake, it's very powerful. You know, Druis Worm, obviously the bigger brother, able to get rid of stuff on its own, but Baldrake is no slouch there.
So he's going to have to just attack over the SP Little Knight too, because if he were to do anything, well, maybe not now, but the SP Little Knight would have also banished, and then Regain would have activated on the opponent's turn.
Oh, but speaking of Fiendsmith cards, we see Requiem back on the field, having just recently been returned to the extra deck because any 2 effect monsters. Hello, Moon of the Closed Heaven. It is the Light Fiend. Right now, Lacrima hitting the field there. So shuffling up before we activate the effect there of Lacrima. Maybe sending an additional card to the grave. Haven't seen a lot of Fiendsmith's Kyrie this tournament, but definitely still a lot of Fiendsmith's Paradise out there.
Yeah, so this is really where the Fiendsmith cards shine in these simplified game states where both players, well, in this case, mostly just Taylor, has been using hand interactions. As the player's hands get smaller and smaller and smaller, the ability just to constantly bring back Lachrima turn after turn after turn, especially now with this regain on the field, there's these two just continuous avalanche building card advantage engines going on here. So Taylor's going to need something really impressive.
Yes, absolutely. Grabbing that Druid's Worm, so powerful there, banishing again. Didn't use the Fiendsmith in Paradise in the graveyard, but still at least got another Fiendsmith Engraver, so just slowly but surely creating a field here that maybe can reach 8,000 life points in a single turn.
And now we see the second level 6 hit the field. I guess he actually already had Baldrake, so the third level 6. But now he's going to go into High Caesar.
Yes, wanting to keep the Baldrake so that the Druid's Worm actually can be used to take out not one, but maybe two monsters, dependent on just the order of operations here.
Yeah, he's just threatening enough damage to attack for gain here.
Well, it's already pretty big, just shy of 8,000.
Yep.
We're just going to start attacking now, so 2,500, that magic Bestial number.
25. And then 20.
Yep.
Need to 200.
200.
Main phase 2.
Most important life point is the last one you have, so still in the duel here, but it's going to be difficult. Two summons obviously going to be able to stop from the Caesar, but we're also going to make, wow, two dragon monsters combining into a Heretic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres.
Yeah,
Turn.
as I mentioned, that Tenpai
Standby main.
component of this deck is just so small. All of these just sort of mid-rangey,
confirm on
Bestial, Fiendsmith cards, they generate card advantage turn after turn. They work really well with your own hand interactions. And if the game gets simplified, you have this huge benefit here because now you see he's the first time he's had to use a card like Effect Veiler.
Oh, but I see it. It's Triple Tactics Talent.
And then the
Oh, the Ash Blossom for the draw. And that's it, conceding the duel there. So 200 life points, you know, you might have been able to get in there, but Trevor just had all the answers, even down to that last Effect Veiler.
See, this is one of those things that, you know, going back earlier, we're talking about a Tenpai strategy. You were talking about, you know, some of the reaction of the crowd as the Tenpai cards were limited to one, multiple cards limited to one, in addition to the Sangan summon that already had been limited. We didn't even need to see them hit the board, but they're still incorporated in this deck. They procced a response, hand interaction-wise, and then the Bestials and the Fiendsmith card just take over.
Well, I know we were talking a little bit about it off stream, but, you know, even though Tenpai is a lot different than Kashtira, here it kind of served that same role, is pushing the envelope and saying, hey, I want to see what cards you have. Stop this, or you're about to lose, because Tenpai, like you said, is just one card away from victory. So definitely helped force those outs and then start playing the Fiendsmith package.
Yeah, the Fiendsmith package, anytime the game is simplified, like I mentioned, are, you know, really valuable. I think the Kashtira cards, to that point, kind of serve a somewhat similar roles in the cases of the Fiendsmith cards of just threats that continuously, every single turn, build up card advantage. Now, that's what the Fiendsmith Lachrima constantly being brought back to the field kind of resembles when we think about the Kashtira cards. And then when you add the Bestial cards, especially a card like Regain with the draws, and this deck, you know, really utilizes that really quite well because it can recycle some of those Fiendsmith cards itself. You have this just combination of really three separate engines all into one deck that just blends so well with each other, while at the same time incorporating a large amount of non-engine cards. Now you're playing triple Ash Blossom, triple Effect Veiler, you're playing Fool Aloes, you're playing Nibiru, you're playing Forbidden Droplet in the case of Trevor. So you have a deck that has three supplemental engines, tiny enough that they work well with each other, tiny enough that you're not devoting all into one lane, but also incorporating a ton of non-engine. It's really just a beautiful deck list when you kind of look at it and think, the stereotypical way of building Tenpai, obviously you can't do that anymore. It's not that one-trick pony, though, anymore. It's really evolved into this way of incorporating these supplemental card advantage engines.
No, definitely, you have to really admire the Tenpai duelist because across trading card game, across Master Duel, they are always finding a way to keep it going. Practically have to get rid of all the cards. I love how, is he arranging that to make like a symbol or something? That's kind of funny. Well, I guess we'll get to see that shortly as we go into Game 2 here of our Round 8 featured match. And now you can see, I guess that's a 3 of E? I don't know. Making little card formations.
Standby main. 1, 2, pass.
Ooh, set 3 pass.
This has just not been
Yeah.
Taylor's round.
Well, Taylor's got a smile on his face, certainly a good sense of humor, but just maybe not his
yeah.
moment. Now, he's only got 1 loss. You only need 19 points to make it to day 2, but it will certainly be an uphill battle if he does with that record.
So I have to imagine he has cards like Solemn Judgment set. He has 3 copies of Solemn Judgment in his side deck. He also has, of course, the 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence in his main deck. Metaltronus is another card that he could potentially have set that's an interaction. Besides that, in terms of spell and trap cards that would be set, he doesn't have a whole lot. So I have to imagine he has multiple copies of Solemn Judgment on top of multiple copies of Metaltronus.
We may be getting back down to 200 life points before we know it, but it seems like Trevor is just getting unimpeded Fiendsmith gameplay now as he went from track to Fiendsmith's Requiem, and now we brought out Lacrima.
Yeah.
Now, if there's our Solemn Judgments, that is one of the issues, though, with the Solemn Judgment, because it can't stop monster effects. Stops pretty much everything else, though.
Solemn Judgment is also at its worst when you just simply didn't draw anything else with it, because the 4,000 life points can suddenly make it that even if you have 3 or 4 other interactions, it's not that difficult to put 4,000 on the board.
Certainly is not.
But we do here have a copy of Magnamut, so it doesn't have absolutely nothing. This Magnamut is going to have to do a whole lot for him, but it is at least a point of interaction against the
do you have any
Fiendsmith
turn trigger
engine.
triggers?
No.
Now, I did catch what I see to be a Nibiru there in Trevor's hands, so Taylor is going to have his work cut out for him if the Primal Being is coming down there. But it looks like Trevor just sort of shaping up there, figuring out what the next option is.
I have to imagine that he has Infinite Impermanence set based on sort of the cards that have been activated so far.
I'm going to go ahead and attach the Fiendsmith Requiem to Lacrima, setting a card, not in the Imperm column as it's called.
All right, this
Oh,
is
a pass, wow.
this is exactly where the Fiendsmith cards, typically shine, is when the game is really
I'll go Resolve
simplified.
Magnamut.
However, that one single copy of Magnamut really throws a wrench into that game plan, because obviously we saw it banish the Engraver this turn. Now adding
Can I cut your
Druid
deck as
Worm.
well?
Yeah, go for it.
It'll be interesting to see if just these Bestials can bring Taylor to victory. But it's not a bad start. He already
Draw.
sort of has
Standby
a
main.
counter to that Lacrima. / sequence constantly giving him card advantage every turn.
I'll go Metaltron. Targeting
And there's the
Lacrima.
Metaltronus.
All right, so that's one of the cards we presumed he would have had set. There's nothing that he can do in his hand to stop that. Looks like he just has Nibiru, Effect Veiler, Droll, and Lockbird.
I have no response.
And I think he has a copy.
Looks like Tenpai Dragon,
Yeah.
Fadra, and Pydra.
I think it's one of them.
Okay, yeah,
Based on what I
think,
see,
yeah.
I think it's Fadra from what I can discern, but sometimes it's hard to tell.
All right, so it's the Light Fiend, but it's not the same card there. So we are going to use Metaltronus, not banishing both, but just using that as an
effect,
easy
Requiem
way into
summon.
Fiendsmith Requiem.
Yeah, it's one of the best interactions. It's one of the reasons why Metaltronus is so popular this weekend. You can stop a detonator with it. Of course, you can just instantly go into
effect
your
for
own
Lacrima to
Fiendsmith
send.
engine. So it's one of the reasons why we are seeing more and more copies of Metaltronus. I mentioned in a previous feature match that going forward into the events next weekend, I think you had mentioned the French Open is tomorrow. The first event after a new set, it's kind of that first iteration of the decks. Things start to get really refined. Maybe Metaltronus will be what is
Chaos
refined.
Angel to banish Lacrima.
Certainly information that all the duelists getting ready for YCS Birmingham can use. I mean, I remember that Metaltronus, the last time I feel I saw it popular was when Paolo at the end of YCS Indianapolis flipped it over.
Absolutely.
Everyone went insane, but now it's pretty common.
Wow, so we see here a Forbidden Droplet. That's going to be a way of dodging the Chaos Angel. And then, of course, he also banished the Fiendsmith in Paradise after the summon of Chaos Angel. He used a Lacrima and a Magnamut, so he did, in fact, use a Light and Dark.
All the effects are active.
It's
so
a Droplet
not
resolves.
destroyed by battle, unaffected by cards.
Yeah, I will negate the Chaos Angel.
Until now, of course.
Of course, yeah. But it was with a Light and a Dark, at least initially at the time.
Send Desiree.
Now he's going to be able to send Desiree, and now Desiree is going to be able to
Desiree
activate.
effect.
He's going to
Effect
shuffle
directly
back,
up, and I'll target the,
and now he'll actually be able to send that Chaos Angel to the graveyard. So
No response.
we already know the game state is rather simplified, and I mean, there's the Druid Worm that's in
Go,
hand. The question is, does he have a
Talents to
Rizal?
Delta.
Okay, this is also one of the possibilities, was that he had a card like Talents in
I
his hand.
think you need to cut.
no,
I've not gone back in.
you-
So maybe his opening hand was Magnamut, Talents, Metaltronus,
Yeah, so he should need to.
and I presume a quantity of Infinite
Yeah, so you should need
Impermanence
to cut,
/
right?
Solemn Judgment set.
Yeah, okay.
We're going to go ahead and cut here. Obviously, drawing 2 cards is going to be huge here, depending on what they are. So let's see what this Pot of Greed-like effect did. Oh, Droll and Lockbird actually canceling stuff out from here on out.
It's actually unfortunate he doesn't have Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring because he has just about every other hand interaction with the Nibiru and the Effect Veiler.
Well, speaking of hand interactions, looks like we have the Summon Abyssal Druid's Worm getting rid of that Desiree. Just 25.
Yeah, the Requiem's no longer in the graveyard, so that obvious Requiem plus Lacrima loop is out of the way, at least for right now, until Requiem potentially gets its way back into the graveyard. So I can understand kind of looking at this and seeing, he drew another Infinite Impermanence. Presumably he has 1 set, maybe 2 sets. Could be 3 Infinite Impermanence, honestly. That Infinite Impermanence is probably there with Solemn Judgment. Maybe a second Metal Tronus, I guess. So he's really going to just try and ride that Druid's Worm.
Well, speaking of riding things, we are going to take the Dragon on a ride here. So we go for Tenpai Dragon Fadra. And I think that is Chundra, so we're getting, like, very close to being 1 card away from victory, as Tenpai is known for.
The 1 Chundra and the 1 Fadra.
I mean, just find him in the deck somehow, right? It looks like a Nibiru and Effect Veiler there, so it's really just up to these 2 dragons to win things out.
He has 2 hand interactions, so yeah, this is really it. Because that Druid's Worm can actually potentially go the distance.
You're good.
Oh, wow. So I think here...
On declaration, I'll go Infirm onto Chandra.
That's very strong, forcing out a quick Synchro. That would be the only way to get through this. Now the Fadra, obviously, you're still going to have the protection from battle, but you're not going to have the special summon during the damage step since Chundra was the one that was targeted.
All right, so now he's going to quick Synchro, like you mentioned.
There was 1 attack that will be relevant later.
Yep, we do have to keep track of those, even if it didn't fully connect. Get the Biden Dragon.
We got to get the Fadra there, so a tuner and a non-tuner on the field. Using Fadra's effect there because we didn't actually have any Tenpai Dragons in the graveyard. Remember, that Chundra came from the hand. That's the second attack.
Oh, wow.
And it's because it never had to activate the effect. Now it can. We just reached the damage step, so here's Pydra to prevent any battle damage.
Yeah.
I think it just has 2 Solemn Judgments set at this point.
Yeah, I really think you're right. Now, you could use the Solemn Judgment in order to negate the Synchro summon, but I just feel like it's a bad idea to cut your life points in half against the almighty Tenpai Dragons here. Oh, and Sangen Kaimen as well. Could use that to maybe get a Tenpai Dragon, Genroku, tribute it out, do something funny, but let's see where we go as we're reaching 3 attacks before we know it.
I'll go Effect to Synchro.
Because we used the Chundra's effect to Synchro, so we haven't done Fadra's yet. Oh, we're going for big stuff now. Level 10 Synchro. So Sangenpai Transcendent Dragion hitting the field.
Transcendent Clan Joker.
Yep. I'll take 5.
500.
Yep.
Definitely good stuff there, huh? I mean, the fact that you no longer can worry about the effect of the Druid's Worm because they can't activate effects during the battle phase.
Yep.
I am really curious what... Okay, so it's not...
It's not over yet.
It will be here, though.
17 direct with Hydra.
Yep. 17, 26.
It hasn't used Fadra's...
Yeah,
quick
the Biden
synchro.
Dragons are
there
come
it
back out.
is.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, because then that would be Transcendent Dragion.
I'm really curious what those 2 set cards were.
So yeah,
Are we gonna be
faster
able
to
to
say
see?
try to
No,
Dragion.
It's too bad.
But
Maybe not
that
Solemn
closes,
Judgment.
closes it out though. Wow. Shows you Tenpai is still good.
Yeah, you know, what's interesting was we saw 2 incredibly differing games. The first game, we saw the sort of mid-range, let me just grind you out with the Branded Regained and with the constant Fiendsmith engine. In this game, we saw all it takes, again, is just, in many cases, 1 single Tenpai card to deal 8,000 damage out of nowhere. And again, it's a much smaller package than it was in some of the Tenpai decks we saw before the most recent Forbidden and Limited List update. It's really just sleek, but still effective in what it's trying to do.
To a degree, from a deck building perspective, it almost makes it easier because you're not running all these redundant copies of the cards. You can only run 1, so you have to think of strategies that will supplement it, and that's exactly what was done here.
It just gives it another unique avenue of play. You know, I don't want to say it was a one-trick pony previously, because...
You still have to play the cards, right?
Yeah, some Tenpai players would probably sit me down and be like, no, look, if we went first, I could actually went into Seals. And And you're like, yeah, but that's not really what you're trying to do typically.
A Seal's Pass is not going to win you the duel.
Or describe, some of the synchros that on turn 1 are pretty good. But again, that's not really what the deck is trying to do. Now, though, I think it can go first quite a bit easier than it could previously.
Yeah.
I think the Tenpai cards are just as threatening when they're on the field because clearly they still have the ability of getting access to Biden, Transcendent Dragon to actually just outright win the game. But also in addition to that, if you just have a lot of hand interactions, all it takes is one of those Bystials or Fiendsmith cards to start generating card advantage. And next thing you know, you're not losing to the Tenpai, you're losing to the card advantage generated by the supplemental part of the deck.
Oh, and the Brand of Regain just put in so much value. I think that's something that people have to think about. Lubellion is certainly a playable card right now for sure.
I think a lot of players discovered that relatively recently when Malice was first popularized, that Brand and Regain is just one of the best ways of counteracting those type of strategies.
It almost reminds me of like a tamer version of Card of Safe Return, right? You're just getting those cards each turn, and it really, really goes the distance. And the fact that there's that synergy there, not only are you combating the entire format of light and dark monsters, whether it's Malice, Fiendsmith, etc., Magnamut searches dragons, and last time I checked, Tenpai dragons were dragons. It's not always the case in Yu-Gi-Oh!
No, it isn't, but in this case, it certainly is.
Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Well, speaking of good stuff, in a moment here, we should be ready for our interview. It'll be interesting to hear, so why don't we go and throw it to the stage now?
Thank you very much. I'm live on stage here with Trevor. Congratulations on your feature match win. Pretty swift one as well, and I gotta say, you're just not letting the Tenpai Dragons go. You're putting Fiendsmith, you're putting Bystials. Talk to me about the deck choice.
I think that Chandra is just the best card ever printed, and I don't think that I would feel comfortable entering an event without it. I think that it's incorrect not to. Plus, Hieratic Seal is just also the best card ever printed. So I think that the best way to put those cards into a deck is to just do what I did.
All right, I don't know if you know what the word best means, but there's 2 of the best cards in your deck. I think that's a great way to play Yu-Gi-Oh! At least. Also, Chandra. I mean, yeah, it's still around. Still doing it. But let's talk about the match itself. This is your first feature match. You mentioned that 5 YCS's first feature match. What was it like being up on stage?
It was great. It was a little nervous, but it was also his first feature, so we were both just kind of chilling. I was like, yeah, it's not a big deal, but we're both just up here to have fun, out here on vacation and all that.
Okay, well, you've been to a lot of YCS's. How far have you been able to make it? Is this like the best you've done so far, or are you trying to catch your record?
I'm trying to get a top. I've made day 2 like just almost every time, so I just want to like break the bubble and finally get into a top cut.
Okay, any duelists out there? There's a lot of good duelists here today. Over 2,200 in attendance. Is there anybody that you're hoping that you get a matchup against?
My buddy Preston, hopefully he's still X1. Maybe Triff, so I can beat him again.
Again? Wait, when's the last time you beat him?
It wasn't at a tournament. I beat him in online.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, fantastic. Great job up on stage. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. Best of luck with the rest of the tournament. We're going to throw it back to the casters.